During the lunch break, before queuing, we always looked for each other to talk while we waited. After we got the food, we sat down at our usual place on the south side of the ammunition depot, which was in the northeast corner of the area. We loved this place because the building provided cover from the wind, and when the sun came out, nothing was blocking it. We could bask in the warmth of its light. "What is this yellow thing in the rice?" Cricket asked. "Hulled barley," I explained. "It's cheaper than rice, so it's mixed in." After a few bites, Geza said, "Why didn't they make all of it from barley? At least it would be more." We smiled, and then I looked around carefully. When I was convinced we had no guards nearby, I turned to Laborc, who was eating in silence. "Do you have a plan to escape?" "No." He looked at me expressionless. I was thinking for a while. "You don't want to labor here until we're dead, don't you?" There was silence. The sound of nibbling was only interrupted at times by the spoons hitting the metal plates. "You need to act while you're in good shape. Don't wait until you lose weight like we did. Nowadays, they give us almost enough. We can move normally. We will help." Another minute passed as I looked around. Everyone wants to rebel. All we need is a hero to lead us. Long silence. I didn't understand why he didn't answer. "You really don't want to escape? I don't know you as someone who gives up easily." Laborc finally talked. "You're right. The camp needs a hero, but I'm not one." It hurt what he said. "Not anymore," I corrected. We got back to work. Another tiring shift ensued. When we got into the camp at the end of the day, they lined us up. At such times we had to stand in an array, strictly at an elbow distance. The soldiers surrounded us with machine guns in hand. During the long, frozen stillness, we had time to think. When the present is bleak and lifeless, like a school without students, one ponders the past and the future. What have I done? What do I leave behind? How much joy did I give to my friends? What good was in my life? Questions like these swirled in me. How long can I hold on? Will I make it? What more can I do to survive? Some just collapsed and died without previous symptoms. Others suffered for weeks in the infirmary. Is it better to die fast, or is it better to have time to settle things with God? Is there a way out? Or the only escape route is death? Will I look back on the time of my captivity as a faint memory from long ago? Or will this camp and the grey, lifeless sky be the last image my eyes capture? Any soldier can pull the trigger on a whim. Maybe one of the soldiers will feel like it, maybe not. Being vulnerable wasn't the worst, it was the feeling of insecurity. The camp supervisor stepped in front of us, decorations on his chest. We were worried. He shouted something in Mescan. The soldier beside him translated with a strong accent and broken sentences. "No meat quota. If this continue, consequences happen." Many of us understood the language and could have translated better, but the Mescan people proved too arrogant to get help from us. After this, most of the guards left with the officer. We still had to stand there for about half an hour, probably as a punishment. After we were released, I turned to Laborc. "Please think about what I said." He nodded. After realizing I was waiting in vain for another reaction, I turned to a more immediate problem. I should go take a shower. Although it was impossible to get used to it, we tolerated cold water better than lice did, so we cleaned ourselves almost every day. That was allowed. "There must be a long queue at the showers," I continued. "I don't want to line up. Let's go to the ass wash." "We have to work tomorrow, otherwise they might actually come up with something after all." So we went to the bidets. This is what we call the wash basins installed in Block 5. Bidet or ass wash. From the 2 broken taps at waist height, the water could squirt upwards, so one could drink without a glass. We collected the water in our mess tin and sloshed it on ourselves. We didn't care about nudity anymore. The basins were placed lower than necessary, so if one had sat there, the device would have been perfectly suited to perform the aforementioned activity, as if it had been designed exactly for this purpose. However, according to our own confession, none of us have actually tried this. Laughing at things like this kept us alive, except for Laborc, who usually listened to the jokes with a blank expression. One could only wonder what was on his mind at such times. We were already stumbling towards our tent when 3 men from the camp came to us. I knew one of them. He had previously been a prestigious soldier in the army. He spoke. "Excuse me, Laborc." My friend looked at them. "Could you ask the guards to provide proper tools?" He lowered his eyes, looking embarrassed. His 2 friends, who were there to boost his confidence, behaved similarly. "We asked Nándor, but he doesn't want to. We heard that you—" "I'm sorry," Laborc shook his head. "If you're worried about him, you could replace Nándor. Not everyone likes him and—" Laborc, nodding his head once more, turned away and headed for the tents. Geza, Cricket and I followed. I wasn't really surprised that they had found Laborc. Many listened to him and he was obviously brave. We stopped in front of the tent to talk because we wanted to see if anyone tried to eavesdrop. "Why are you so reluctant? Don't you think people need you?" Laborc shook his head stubbornly. "I'm not a doctor and I don't have bread. Don't make me a leader." I felt let down. What happened? You always stood up for the oppressed. I'm not who I was. What he said really hurt. I'm sorry, but I don't want to risk it. I have better chance of surviving if I shut my mouth tight and do what they say. But if they starve us to death, or they kill us because we're not working properly? I was furious, but I quickly became ashamed by talking disrespectfully to him. Cricket said, "There would be a lot of improvement in our situation if a capable person led the prisoners. The mess camp would also be more lenient if everyone did their job." "Yes, and if there is any rebellion or disorder, they will make me responsible. I don't want it." Laborc took off one of his slippers, then pushed it left and right on the floor with his foot. He finished talking for that day. Diary, April 10th. Some people talk about parallel universes. Well, if they are right, then we are the parallel, not the source, because something is wrong with this planet. Many times I don't feel like writing. I don't feel like doing anything I don't have to do. I would rather just lie down and try to relax. Work is exhausting. They lined us up again yesterday and scolded us for not meeting the norm. The tools are blunt, faulty. Of course we cannot work properly. The good thing is that Geza and Tuchek are working together now. Encouraged by my success, we asked the labor inspector to put them together and he complied with our request. Cricket sometimes can be unruly. It's better if Geza takes care of him. They also said they are less bored. Over the weeks, Mescan guards readily took several of my letters, but I must believe that they never went to the post office, as no reply was received, despite the fact that I wrote the address of the camp to my loved ones. I asked around, no one else received a reply, so we gave up trying with a sore heart. Over time, Nándor suspected that a coup was being prepared against him, and despite Laborc's unwillingness to lead the prisoners, he came to teach a lesson to the usurper. "I hear you talk behind my back." Laborc didn't answer, just lowered his head. Cricket and I backed away in fear. You stop flapping your mouth or I'll bash your face in. Laborc raised his hands, shaking them sideways. I don't want to fight you. He shook his head. Ask anybody what I said. Yeah, Nándor said, pushing him. Laborc fell to the ground, raising his hand there too. Please listen. People were already starting to gather. Many in the market were idle, involuntarily looking in the direction of Nándor's loud words. He yanked Laborc from the ground, set him on his feet, hit him, and said, No, it's time to... I didn't really see what happened, because the prisoner chief's shoulders partially obscured my view, but I heard something like a clap, and Nándor fell to the ground in an instant and lay there comatose. Laborc stopped above him and said, Damn it, who needed this? He spoke at a moderate volume, not many could hear him. A rifle shot echoed. Our luck didn't hold this time. The Mexicans took action. One of the soldiers fired into the air. People started to run away in fright. Laborc shook his head and looked at Nándor lying on the ground. Evolutionary scientists are looking for the missing link. Well, they'll live here among us. The soldiers arrived, one of whom hit Laborc with a rifle. Laborc immediately threw himself on the ground without resisting. He crouched down, held his hands up. The soldier angrily kicked him one more time, but he calmed down quickly. Géza and I were just a few steps away. I saw everything. The other people quickly dispersed, afraid of retaliation. An officer approached, directing the soldiers. He started shouting and kicked Laborc. Rezir, wait. Laborc put his hands up, showing his palms to the man. The officer was very surprised to be called by name. He leaned forward, looking at Laborc's face. Laborc? He uttered the name with a strong accent, but he seemed to recognize my friend. He dismissed the soldiers, who started carrying Nándor in the direction of the infirmary. The officer helped Laborc. Greetings, Rezir, said Laborc. Good afternoon, he replied, pronouncing Shoanra words with difficulty. What happened? Nándor felt his authority was questioned and started to fight. Laborc explained casually. I just stood there and watched. We're appointing you as commander. He nodded like he wanted to encourage himself. Laborc sighed. He wasn't happy about the promotion. The officer walked away. As the poet said, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. From then on, Laborc became the alpha male. Diary, April 22nd. Recently, we have been placed again for railway construction. It goes as slowly as the others, but the labor inspector only yells, he doesn't hit us. They didn't make a big fuss about Laborc's promotion. He has been called in. He said he was interrogated. Then, one day, they lined us up in the usual way, with Laborc standing at the front, and we were told to bother him with our banal business. They only wanted to be involved in the things he could not resolve. I can see Laborc does not like this at all, but I think it will definitely improve our chances. When I asked why he agreed, he quoted from the Bible. Open thy mouth for the dumb, in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction. Say something from your childhood that you wish existed now, Cricket said. As I pondered my answer, Géza said, happiness. That single word started a whole wave of emotions in me. It came unexpectedly, especially from Géza's mouth. Maybe that's why it was so poignant. It left a mark. I later gave that feeling a name. Chicken with paprika, I said, after a few seconds of silence, to steer the conversation towards more blissful topics, as an attempt to break out of the melancholy. Can food be delivered here by mail? Géza asked. At least a bread roll with sausage. If it was here, I wouldn't even unwrap it. I'd bite through the paper, I don't care." We laughed, though what he said was kind of sad. "But not from the 50, from the 65. 65 is the real deal," I agreed. "The 50 is the poker sausage." "What do you mean, poker sausage?" Cricket asked. "Well, it's just like when they play poker, all in. Everything they sweep off the butcher's counter goes into it. Cartilage, pieces of bone and stuff." "At least now it's better than it was," I sighed. "Yeah," Geza agreed. "The worst was when we shared that rusk. You have never told us where you got it." I stayed silent, ashamed to admit my weakness, how I was lying on the ground in despair. "Who are you, actually?" Cricket turned to Laborc. He might have sensed my awkwardness. Laborc did not respond. He sat there so indifferent, as if he hadn't been asked. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. "You said you knew him?" Cricket recalled as he looked at me. "Not very well," I retorted. "What do you know about him?" Taking a deep breath, I tried to gather my thoughts. "When I was a kid, we lived in the same city." I paused here. I was reminded of the insecurity I had felt when I was young. We knew about the tense relationship between the countries. I was worried about the future. Uncertainty plagued my mind. I tried to choose a profession that would be needed even if a war broke out. Cricket was nagging me, so I continued. "What I heard is that he was raised by wolves." "Like the Fugitive?" Geza interrupted. "Who's that?" "A hero. Never mind. Go on." "He lived on the street, then moved into a forest on the outskirts of the city, building a shack for himself. He saved some guy." "Do you know what has happened to him?" I turned to the old acquaintance, but he still ignored us. I started to get embarrassed, but I tried to hide it. Anyway, the guy stayed next to him for a while. Later, all sorts of homeless and vagabonds joined them, and he socialized them. Eventually, more than 10 people were living in the woods. Most of them had regular jobs. I know because my parents used to give money to one of them. The ones who wanted to change stood by him. The others hated them and left. Then, all of a sudden, he disappeared. I think he moved. I didn't even ask Laborc anymore. I just glared at him to see if he was paying attention or not. I haven't heard from him in a very long time, but his people stayed there, and by the time I moved out, there was already a proper house there. Maybe they had bought the area. As I said this last sentence, I felt it was probably not true, but I didn't have the courage to correct myself. "It seems like he gave up," Geza said. Cricket replied, "He has fallen. Someone bested him. I heard he had made a great mistake and given up. He obviously doesn't want to lead people." "I can't believe this." I shook my head. "He is stronger than that." "I heard," Cricket continued, "that once there was an outlaw in town who had killed several people. His name started with an O. He challenged Laborc there on the scene, but he ran away. He did not go back to that city after that." "Who told this to you?" I asked. "One of the prisoners." I concluded that the source could not be trusted. Cricket remarked, "There must be some truth in it. You see, he doesn't want to do anything." "I don't think so. I think there must be something else in the background." I didn't want to believe Laborc was cowardly. "And what happened to the murderer?" Geza asked. "The police shot him, but he managed to flee." Geza and I nodded. "He is strange." Geza shook his head. "They said he lived in block 3 at first. He didn't talk to anyone for days. He acted so bizarre. He wasn't welcome anywhere. No one wanted to sleep next to him." "Don't tell this to anyone." "That he has fallen?" I asked. "If he decides to get us out of here, he needs respect." "It doesn't matter." He said it 1,000 times. He's not planning to break out, Giza said bitterly. He hates responsibility, that's obvious, Cricket agreed. Yeah? Then why did he stand up when you wanted to beat that guy? I objected. You heard it. He was afraid they wouldn't give us food. He intervened when no one else dared. I defended Laborc fiercely. I thought he would just stand there and watch like the others. But he stood between you, I said, raising my palm towards Laborc. We got into the debate so much, we talked as if he wasn't even there. But he said it countless times. You've heard it with your own ears. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to lead prisoners, Cricket argued. Yes, and then why did he accept being appointed? I repeated. Just listen to him. How do you even know he's on our side? On our side? I knew him when I was this high. I raised my palm to about chest height. He lived in our city. That's right, but who knows what happened since? He just arrived, we don't know a thing about him. I'm afraid to be a soldier, but I'm not afraid to protect my loved ones, Laborc said quietly. The three of us fell silent, looking at him almost in amazement. Laborc was just staring at the ground. For long seconds, we looked around awkwardly, wondering what to say. Laborc started talking. I don't like to be alone. I'm glad I can call you my friends now. It felt good to hear this. I wasn't made for rivalry, Laborc continued. I don't want to quarrel. I would rather have friends than enemies. Laborc did not want to rule. Don't get me wrong, he was able to lead and direct people, but he didn't feel satisfied by it. I don't really know what to do, he continued. The chances of escaping are very slim. I try to find a way, but no will. The guns are kept under lock and key. There are guards everywhere. He spread his arms. If we try without succeeding, death is certain. But maybe we won't starve anymore. Illness can kill us. Or if for some reason they decide we are no longer needed, but that's absurd. I don't like living here either. He paused for a few seconds. I don't know what to do. I feel like the poet said, many times I wonder if God wants a wiser man to have my place. He paused, but we didn't dare speak. Now they are definitely watching me. If I'm cornered, I'm not afraid to fight. But I know we had the upper hand in the war. Maybe it will end, and we will be rescued. As long as it's better to stay silent, as long as the threat is smaller if we don't try to escape, you get it. He waved and said no more. We listened with a squeezed mouth. Cricket nodded because Laborc was right.